Hey, Joe here from Home Studio Corner. Welcome to the very first episode of Season 3 of Mix Together. In front of me, you can see on my screen, I've got the folder that I've just downloaded that has all the tracks for this song. We'll get to that in a second. In addition to this PDF file that gives you some information specifically about the band. So if you haven't already, head over to homestudiocorner.com/MT for Mix Together and enter your email address. You'll get an email from me with a download link for a zip file. When you open it up, it will look just like this, and lots of links here for the band Indecent Silence. Check them out on Spotify, Google, all these things. Follow them on YouTube and Facebook. Listen to the original music video here. Really cool band, and they're out of Denmark, which just makes it even cooler to me. One quick thing: the mix that they've already released this EP. They didn't hire me to mix this one. I think they hired somebody over in Denmark. They just submitted the song for Mix Together, which is super great. So thank you to them. And in doing so, they agreed to allow you to use the song to build your portfolio. So if you don't have a lot of mixes that you've finished, mix this song, and then you can put it on your website or on your SoundCloud page to say, hey, here's an example of what I can do when I sit down to mix a song. Now, you need to give credit to the band, preferably their name, and also link back to their social media platforms and all that. That's why I've included this PDF in the files that you receive so that they can get some exposure out of this as well, because they're donating this song to us for free, which is super awesome. So say thank you by mixing the song and promoting them wherever you do your social media hanging out. So thank you, Indecent Silence. You're awesome. By the way, it was right at about 100 submissions, and I listened to all of them and settled on, there were several really good ones, settled on this one as the one that I wanted to mix. I just got excited watching the music video and then listening to the music. It just rocked hard, and I felt like, I want to mix a song that rocks hard. So a couple of things to keep in mind. First thing, I'll be mixing in Studio One, like I said in the intro video. If you don't use Studio One, that's completely fine. I'll be showing you concepts and strategies. I'll be using different tools, and they'll look different from what you have, but the concepts are exactly the same, and you can apply them fairly easily to your system. So don't let that scare you off. Secondly, this is going to be an unscripted series of videos, meaning I'm not going to cut out all the embarrassing bad stuff. If you haven't watched any of my videos before, this might be new to you. Maybe this is your first video from Home Studio Corner. Hi, welcome. I don't like to polish it up and make it look really, really awesome. What I mean is, it would be really tempting to start this mix, and if it's going badly and sounds awful, to just shut off the video and start over and keep doing it until I get it right. Or if I try an EQ or a compressor setting and it sounds bad, let's edit that part of the video out so I only show you the stuff that works. That's not real life. Real life is sitting down, making educated guesses as to what the mix needs, but then trying out those guesses and half the time failing. Half the time they don't work. Half the time I'll try something, I'll spend 5-10 minutes setting it up and realize, hey, this doesn't sound good. It actually sounds kind of awful. I'm going to leave all of that in these videos, because I want you to know, that that's what real life looks like. Whether you've never mixed a song in your life, or like me, you've mixed hundreds of songs, there's still an element of you just kind of have to feel your way through the mix, and you have to just try stuff. There will also be times in the video where I'm going to know exactly what frequency I want to EQ and what I want to compress and how I want to set things up, and you may feel a little bit behind because you don't hear those things or you don't automatically know what settings to use. That's one of those things that comes with practice and repetition. Once you've mixed hundreds of songs, you'll be able to do that much quicker as well. So if it takes you longer than me, or you don't hear the things as clearly, don't feel left out. Don't feel like you are missing anything. All you need is just more practice and repetitions. It's like when I first went to the gym and I saw somebody do a really cool, 100 pull-ups or something crazy. I couldn't do more than 3. I knew that I would be capable of doing that one day, but I had to put in the work to get there. You're not going to get there right away, but it's a fun journey. So just decide that you're going to put in the work. You're going to mix this song and then another song and another song, and you're going to get better over time. You just will, okay? And there's one more thing I want to tell you. If you want to dive in deeper, let's say I'm doing EQ stuff and you're still a little bit fuzzy on exactly what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, or you're not sure exactly what a compressor does and what it sounds like, I've got a whole series of training courses that are available to you that you can purchase, or you can actually become a VIP Gold member. This is relatively new. It's in the PDF here in the files. Click there for the details. That's where you basically pay a single monthly fee and you get access to all of my courses, tons and tons of courses in there that'll cover everything from recording, mixing, tracking, production, EQ, compression, editing, all that stuff. So if you want to dive in deeper, those are available to you. But let me not talk anymore, and let's pull the files in. So here are the files here. We'll come back to those in a second. I'm going to create a new song in Studio One, and the song is called You're Not Alone, 48K, 24-bit. These are what the files are. You want to set your session to this ideally. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. It really doesn't matter that much. You'll notice we don't have a tempo for the song. The band did not give it to me, and a lot of people really want to know the tempo. I just don't care as much. If I end up needing to use a delay that is very specifically timed to the tempo of the song, I'll figure out the tempo myself. I'll tap it in. It'll be close. It's fine. Yes, if we had the tempo, that would be nice, but I just don't care. So the tempo defaults here to 85. And the time signature to, it's so silly, 12/4. And I don't want to stretch audio. I don't want to play overlaps. And I'm going to use my mixing template. Now, I will, this template is ever changing, but it's a good idea to have a template or start working on creating a template for yourself. Let me do MT for mix together. Because you'll find that you do the same sort of repetitive tasks over and over when you set up a mix. So having some things already in your mix session when you begin can be super helpful. So the band is Indecent Silence. The title is You're Not, I can't type, Not Alone. Super duper. This is just song information that gets added if I were to export an MP3 file. Not that important. So as you can see, there's a bunch of stuff going on in my session already. I'm going to go quickly overview this. I've got a video out there on my template. I've actually changed it a little bit since then, but I'll show you really quickly. The core of my template are these red tracks to the left. Anything you see in my session that has a blue fader, that is a bus, meaning I can route other things to this track, and it is like a catch-all, like an auxiliary bus, an aux track in Pro Tools, where I can run all my drums here, and then I can put plugins like an EQ and a compressor to compress the entire drum kit. That is a huge part of how I work. I call it backwards mixing. People like Graham Cochran call it top-down mixing. Doesn't matter what you call it. The idea is run your tracks through buses and then process the bus first to get the overall tone you want. Then you end up doing less work on the individual tracks. Doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to do individual stuff, but a lot of times I found I save myself a lot of time and I get a better sounding mix by EQing and compressing the drum bus first and then going back and EQing the kick drum and the snare drum if they still need it, okay? So I've got typical session, drums, bass, electrics, acoustics, keys, vocals, background vocals. In addition, these white tracks to the right, these are my different effects buses that I use. So they're similar to the buses over here, except they don't have sends. These are just effects channels, and they behave the same way as a bus, meaning I can say I'm going to send some of my drums to the room reverb, or the snare drum, or the toms, or the entire drum kit. And on these channels, I've got plugins already set up. So here's the room reverb that I like. Here's the longer plate reverb that I like with a big 6-second decay time. Here's a spring reverb that I like. Here is a slapback delay that I like. You can pause the video to look at my settings as much as you want. Here is a quarter note analog delay that I like, and here's a different delay set to half notes that I like. Now I can change any of these over the course of the mix, and I rarely use all of them in a mix, but I use them enough. I've brought them into enough sessions to realize, okay, I'm going to have these just sitting here waiting for me in my session, so when I need a slapback delay on that vocal, I can just come over to the vocal bus, for example, and I can go, I need some slap delay. Boom. It's much like if you've seen, Chris Lord-Alge mixing videos where he's saying, yeah, that could use a little bit of this effect over here in my rack. It's already patched in. It's already set up with a preset ready to go. He just has to manually patch it in on his SSL. We're doing the same thing, except it's all in the software. So every piece of software, recording, mixing software I've ever used, with the exception of maybe GarageBand, has the ability to do simple things like route all the vocals over to this channel to add some slapback delay to it. Now, if you're wondering why I do it that way versus putting the delay directly on the track, that's another video for another day. I have a video on that. You can search my channel and find that out. Now, the next step of this process, all of these, so everything in my session gets routed to these red tracks. Then I also can route some of those, copies of those, to these effects buses, and they're all feeding this mix bus here. This is another bus that has everything. Everything ends here. Now, this is where I can put my bus compression, like an SSL style compressor or something like that, on here, okay? That all lands on this mix bus. And then this is new for me, and I've got a video on this as well if you want to go back and watch these from a couple months back. I've started printing my mixes to an audio channel. So everything you see right here is either a bus or an effects return. None of them are actual audio tracks. The only audio track is this print track that you see up here in my arrange window. This is where I can literally, when I'm done with my mix or I'm ready to bounce down mix 1, instead of exporting it out into a folder that I have to keep track of, I'll record it back into the session onto this track. So everything in the session is going to this mix bus. And then you can see this audio track is being fed by the mix bus, and it's going out the main output. So the only thing feeding my main outputs over here, the only thing feeding that is this print track, or this my bounce track, or whatever you want to call it. I call it print, and I usually change it to the name of the song, so the audio file name actually gets called the song name, which is super helpful. You're alone. That's not what we're trying to say. Oops. I don't know what I just did. Okay. Let's try You're Not Alone. It's got a little better feel to it. All right, so now that's called You're Not Alone. So when I'm ready to do my mix, all I have to do, this button means we're listening to this, and then I click that, and now we're ready to record, and I can literally record the mix down. You don't have to do it this way. You can just do regular old, export, bounce to disk, whatever you call it. In Studio One, it's called Export Mixdown. That will work just fine as well. This is what I do. This is my current setup. You can go see previous setups. If you look at Season 1 and Season 2 of Mixed Together, I did more of a traditional just bounce to disk type approach, and I've altered it. So we're always evolving, always changing the way we work. This is my current setup. This is how I like to work. So let's get the files in here and set up. Just a fair warning, I know this video is a little bit dry, is a little bit hurry up and get to the point, Joe, but I want to make sure I cover enough bases so nobody's lost right out of the gate. I'm sure I will lose you from time to time, or you may not know what I'm doing, or I might not explain things well, but I'm trying to at least set a good foundation for the start. So here are our files. If you open them up in a folder, depending on how you have it sorted, it might be kind of random. You can sort it alphabetically, which is a little more helpful, or here's a little pro trick. I did some pre-work for you. These tracks were named a little more. It was a little harder to understand which was what. Like the guitars had names like EG.DUP. Blah, blah, blah. It was just hard to know what was what. So I renamed everything for you to make life a little bit easier. And if you use the date modified, sort it by the date modified, you can actually see it in the order that I had it in my session. So that'll make it just ever so slightly easier for you if you're going to just drag and drop them into your session. So I'm going to come in here to this folder. I can see that I've got 46 items here. So there are 46 tracks in this song. Not small. I'm going to select them all, and then I'm just going to drag them onto my timeline all the way to the left. And you'll see, boom. Bunch of tracks brought in. It's going to take a minute for the system to create waveforms. I'm going to hit save, which will copy all of these files to my media folder. A lot of systems like Pro Tools automatically do this. For some reason, Studio One gives you the option. Of course, I want to copy them into my session folder so they're all in the same place. So I will say yes. Now, while that is loading in, there's a couple things I'm going to do. And this is something I typically do before I actually even listen to anything in a session. I will pull the audio files in, usually the day before a session, or if I'm going to mix it at night, I'll do it sometime in the afternoon. It's kind of the administrative work of mixing, where it's less creative and it's more just trying to get things organized and in a place where I know where everything is. So what I'll do is I'll bring all the tracks in, and I'll just start moving them around. A lot of times, you have it a little bit easier this time because the tracks are already kind of in the right order for you. But oftentimes, I'll find myself having to just listen to some tracks I don't even know what they are because they're not named properly. For some reason, lots of people don't name tracks well. I'm going to move all my buses to the right-hand side. So real quickly, I'm just doing a thing where I can see more faders at once. All my buses and effects and everything are to the far right of my session. That's the way I like it. And then all the audio tracks are to the left. You can do it however you want. This is how I like to do it. So a lot of the administrative work, sometimes I'll be listening to some other music while I'm working because this stuff doesn't really matter. I'll get all the drums together in the order that I want. So things like kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom, tom 1, 2, 3, overhead. We got a bunch of room mics in this session, close room, far room, and stereo, and then a mono room, then shaker and a couple of tambourines. That's what those are. Those are all going to go to my drum bus. So two things I want to do. First, I want to route them to my drums bus. Now they're all routed. Then I want them to all be the same color so I can visually get around the session pretty easily. So let's go blue for those. Okay. Now, just real quickly, if you're not familiar, kick in and kick out. Pretty standard technique for recording kick drum. One microphone kind of inside the drum, inside the hole in the resonant head, and then another microphone outside the drum. Typically, the kick in is a little clickier sounding. The kick out has more punch and bottom end. Snare top and bottom. We'll talk about these. We'll do the phase check at some point. But this is literally a snare on top and a snare on bottom. You want to flip the phase on those usually. All right, up next is our bass track. This may seem a little bit silly, but I like to route the bass track to the bass bus. It's just a single track. You might think that's stupid, and that's okay if you don't want to do it that way. I just like the idea of every audio track being routed to a bus over here. So if at any point in the mix, I can just look at these, 7 faders, and I can essentially do my whole mix here once I've got the balances set with all the individual tracks, right? And even though I have a single bass track, I'd rather route it to this bass bus so that in the future, if I want to take that bass and duplicate it and take the duplicated copy and add distortion to it, which I do a lot, it'll duplicate this track. Let's just do it right now. Let me do that from over here. I will copy this track. Guess what? It duplicated it, and now they're both routed to that bass bus. So I don't have to go do some crazy different routing. They're already routed to the bass bus, which is typically where I do all my processing, not on the individual track anyway. So just something to keep in mind. All right, next up we have a bunch of electric guitars. Now, as you can see from just looking at the waveform, I'll zoom them in so you can see them a little bit better. Not all the guitars play at once. There's a few parts like these and these that literally just play 2 or 3 times in the song. So when you see 11 or 12 guitar tracks, fear not, it's not as bad as it seems. It's just there's mainly 4 main guitars that play the whole time and then 2 lead guitars and 1 other lead guitar down. It's manageable. But if you get a session where there's just a bunch of guitars and you don't know what to do, my advice would be to group them together visually. So if you see, okay, these 4 guitars all play at the same time, put them together. And now you know, okay, I'm going to deal with these as kind of one unit. And then put these together and these and these. That's what I've done for you. So you're welcome. But let's color code these. I like a greenish on my electric. So we're going all the electric guitars plus the lead guitars plus the clean guitars. These are all my electric guitars. We're going to go with something like, it's 2. I know it may seem silly, but I spend a little bit of time getting the right shade of green. That works for me. All right, up next we have 2 acoustic guitars. They're going to get their own bus. I'm going to color them maybe a lighter green. It looks like a lime. Okay. Slightly different green. All my guitars are green. I forgot to route the electrics. Electric guitars are going to my electrics bus. Okay? Those are routed correctly. Acoustic guitars are going to the acoustics bus. Beautiful. Up next, I've got the vocals. So right now I've got it split up into BGVs, which are background vocals. They'll be going to my BGV bus, and they will be some shade of purple, because that is the color of background vocals. And then all my vocals here, right now, this may change, are all just going to the same vocal bus. A lot of times I'll do the same processing on the bus for all the vocals, and then I'll route them to that. And so everything's going through the same processing. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't work at all. We will find out if that works or not. But especially since if you look at vocal 1 and 2, it's just a double, and there's always at least 2 vocals singing at once. I'd rather not process both of them independently if I can help it. I'm a little bit on the lazy side, so if I can do all my vocal processing on the vocal bus, well, that's great. Okay, so now let's kind of zoom out for a second. Let's look. Everything's organized. It looks a lot easier. Now, it's simple. It's drums, bass, electric, acoustic, vocals, background vocals. That's it. Not that difficult. Let's make sure our routing is good. All the drums are routed to the drum bus. Okay? I'm looking at this row of letters right here. The top one is the input, the bottom one is the output. The bass is routed to the bass bus, the electrics are all routed to the electric bus, acoustics to the acoustic bus, vocals to the vocal bus, background vocals to the background vocal bus, and if we look over here, we can see everything looks good. I can get rid of the keys bus because this is a rock band. They don't need no keyboards. So now I've just got drums, bass, electric, acoustics, vocals, background vocals. We haven't listened to a thing yet, but our session is already feeling much more organized. All of these buses, as I mentioned before, are routed to my mix bus, as are my effects buses. My mix bus is here. There's a little funny thing here. I have to route the mix bus to an empty bus that doesn't go anywhere, so that when I set the input of this You're Not Alone print track to mix bus, we don't hear it twice. I know that's confusing. Don't worry about it. It's just the inner workings of Studio One are a little bit quirky when it comes to this routing stuff. So everything's essentially going through this mix bus into this mix channel that is then going out my main outputs. Just so you know, when I do any mix bus processing, it will happen on this mix bus track, not on my main output, because I want my mix bus compressor and anything else that I do here to be recorded to this audio track. So all the processing needs to happen before that audio track, which is why there won't be plugins on the audio track and there won't be plugins on the main master fader either. Okay, as boring as that was, we have done the first phase of mix setup: color coordinate, organize, get them lined up, get everything routed where it needs to go. Now we're ready to start listening and figuring out how are our levels. Do we need to do any gain staging, even though I hate that phrase, and then phase stuff. Got to do that as well. So we'll get to all of that, at least started, in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget, if you want to download these tracks 100% for free and mix along with me, I highly recommend it. That's the way you'll get the most out of this free video series. Head over to homestudiocorner.com/MT. Enter your email address. I will send you a download link for these tracks, and you will download something that looks very much like this, and you will be on your way to mixing this song with me. All right, that's it. I'll see you in the next video.